Hey there, I'm Pastor Brian, and it's time for Questions from Kids. Today, Mia from Fall River, Massachusetts asks,
I'm a Christian, but I still feel afraid a lot. Is it wrong to feel afraid?
Mia, let me give you the big answer to that question right off the bat, and it is this. No, it's not wrong to feel afraid. We all feel afraid about something. And really, I think it helps to think about today's Bible story to understand how we are supposed to handle the fear that we feel. Think about the story. So you had the Israelite army who were afraid of Goliath, which is understandable because he was huge. He's this great warrior. And all the Israelite warriors were afraid to go out and face him. And then David comes along and he sees that Goliath is making fun of God, and he had no patience for that. So David goes out and he faces off and fights Goliath. Now here's the thing. Surely David was still afraid. But here's the difference. The Israelite army was afraid, and that caused them to fail to act on God's behalf. They sat there silently as God was mocked by Goliath. David, on the other hand, was afraid but still acted in faith, trusting in God, even though he was afraid. And there's the difference. It's okay for us to feel afraid, but what we don't want to have happen is that to paralyze us and be disobedient against what God has called us to do. So here's a big idea. When you're feeling afraid, remember that Jesus has gone before you. He has fought for you. He is with you. He has defeated the greatest enemies we have of sin and death. And so when we're afraid of things, we can remember that God has given us Jesus to be with us, to fight for us. So really, he's taking care of us, our greatest enemies. What do we have to be afraid of then? And so that should give us confidence and hope that we can still act even though we feel afraid. But there's another thing here, and that is this, that God has given us the Holy Spirit. Remember, the Holy Spirit is always with us. So when we feel afraid about something, we can pray and ask God to help us and ask the Holy Spirit to help give us courage that we need. Courage is not acting in the absence of fear. Courage is acting even when we do feel afraid. And that's what God has given us, the ability to be courageous for Him because we know who He is and what He has done and what He will do, taking care of us even when we feel afraid. So what are you most afraid of? And how can trusting God help you overcome that fear that you feel?